Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're going to take you into a world, well, you may think you know it, but you've probably never been behind the kitchen doors. We're going to take you there with a man who's built his career spending time in the kitchen, cooking for others, and creating some incredible concepts along the way. The one and only Chef Pascal. Welcome, sir.
Hey, it's good to be here again. And I think we have a great show ahead. I'm excited, and we're going to give our audience some kitchen secret, kitchen stories, and that's what the show is all about, you know. And, you know, sometimes our guests are all shy. They don't want to talk too much about it because, you know, there's things that kind of what goes in the kitchen, stay in the kitchen, you know. But,
Yes.
but we're going to try to dig in a little bit. Before I introduce my guest today, I want to talk about something that's been concerning me lately and concerning a lot of my chefs and restaurant owners. They have a difficulty to justify the price of their food on the menu. Mostly because my friends and chef restaurant owners are very dedicated to quality, and they are not going to give up on quality and local sources and, you know, sustainable food sources and things like that. So I want to make sure the audience understand that, and this justify some of the increase of cost, especially with the labor, increase of ingredient prices. So I just wanted to shout out a little bit because it's very frustrating for a lot of us. They work very hard and they struggle to run their business. So please, I'm sure the audience will understand that. You can tell your friends, and if you go out, you know, yeah, if your entrees or it costs a couple more dollars this month than it was 6 months ago, there is a reason.
There's a reason. One of the things, though, that people are doing is coming up with creative concepts. Ethnic food, you've talked about that. And today, we'll guess, here's an example of creative cuisine that doesn't cost $1 million.
This is more than ethnic food. This is a designer food.
Yeah.
And so, with no further ado, let me present my friend chef Keith Prant, and a very hardworking man that he has a great, beautiful resume. He works with some great chef, and he just came up with a new concept. And you know, we all love hot dogs, all right, don't we? And
I do,
especially coming up 4th of July. You know, you need to have hot dog. You know, come on, if you don't, you think that your day is missed. You know, you have to wait for next year. So, but you know, we can celebrate 4th of July every weekend, no matter what. But
I thought it was just that, a hot dog. It's just a Costco, a Dodger dog or something.
No, those are good too. Yeah. No, even, you know, German hot dogs as well too. Yeah, I have to say, and based on what Chef Keith is doing, I realize actually every country in the world have its own type of sausage.
Really?
It's very
I never thought about that.
Yeah, think of that. You know,
okay.
South Africa, you know, Asian country, Korean, France, Germany, Belgium, even England, they all have their own winners. You know, so
winners, wieners.
whatever.
They're wieners, a wiener dog.
And so, but Keith is taking it as more than one step above.
I certainly think so. A whole nother dimension.
He creates his own sausage, his own stuffing, handmade from scratch, and the whole of them, each of them actually have different flavors, different seasoning, different type of meat. Is unbelievable, you know. And you know, not talking about little hot dog, we're talking about sausage.
So bring your chef. What's your guest name and what's the company?
Keith Prant, and his company is called Haute. You know, I like the French side. Haute, and Dawgz.
Haute Dawgz.
Yeah, Dawgz. All right, and it's called as description is food. It's a boutique sausage shop, and so
Welcome.
I have a couple. Welcome, Chef Keith. And first, why did you call it that way?
The name was kind of conceptualized because, as you know, I have the Hot Productions company.
We're going to
We do
get that.
catering.
On top of that, he does. He run a very, I would say, a great catering company. Very successful. And so, like, you're not busy enough. Now you open a boutique.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe I just wanted to get more busy. Well, like it comes from like the hot cuisine. You know, that's kind of where I derived it from, and kind of trying to bring that level of culinary technique and skill to something as simple as, maybe considered simple, as sausage production. You know, and when it comes to the catering and when it comes to pretty much everything that I do, I try to carry that level of expertise with what we're doing, you know. So I call it Haute because, as you know, we're elegant,
We know.
soigné, we're trying to keep
Haute
everything
couture.
Bocuse. Yeah, and
So it's like a haute cuisine.
you know, I do have a pretty high employee turnover because I really need to have people who
Really?
understand
Are you
that.
a tough chef?
Something like that. You know, and it's just, we have a standard that we want to keep. We have a level of excellence and just standardized.
Yeah.
You know, it's a high standard where I come from, and you know, when I want to.
All this for a simple hot dog?
No,
Turning it
nothing
into a
simple
hot-
there. Paul, there's
It's
nothing,
sausage, it really is
nothing
sausage.
simple there. And I like what Chef Keith just said, because he has a vision, he has a goal. He's an artist, he's a creator, and you know the product that he creates, he wants that to be done again and again the right way, his own way as well.
Right, and like, I mean, as you know, sausage production, the concept, the steps are simple, but when it comes to emulsifying, right, it's very specific. If you over
Hold on,
emulsify or
hold
you
on.
over
I'm
grind,
smelling something really good. Paul, our producer, is not talking now because he's enjoying one of our Chef Keith productions.
I'll try
Can-
my French.
can-
Incredible.
Can you bring up that sausage into the camera?
I'm going to stick my hand into the shot.
All right,
I already bit part of it.
all right, okay. Chef Keith,
Tell
maybe
us
we
what it-
can.
tell us what this
sure.
is.
this is actually the Sayua sausage that we make. It's a 7-inch, 7-ounce link, so they're relatively a lot larger than what you buy from the store.
Yes.
The Sayua blend is like a northern Thai inspired flavor profile. So we use fresh kefir lime leaves, fresh lemongrass, fresh cilantro, fresh garlic, spices like cayenne, curry sauce, things like that. So we've kind of taken like Pascal was saying, the concept of the northern Thai sausage Sayua, and kind of put our own spin on it, you know, because a lot of sausages come in different shapes and sizes. You know, the casings, and you can either go hog casing, beef casing, lamb casing, you know, and so we use a traditional hog casing just for consistency purposes, you know, same size. And then there's, you know, other things like a term that we were introduced to when in production of sausage is whiskers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with whiskers. Mm-hmm. It's the little skins that grow on the sides of the casing, and so we have to, you know, make sure we manicure the sausage well, and to make sure that we use, you know, little petite scissors to trim the hairs off of it, and we want to make sure we have a presentable,
Don't
clean
give
sausage.
too many details.
Well, and that's something that I kind of inspired me to start.
We
the
like
company.
to know what sometimes we don't
Isn't
want
that
to know.
in America we say that's how the sausage is made, meaning it's an ugly process to watch how they stuff sausage or whatever.
No, the process is fine, but you know, the use of the product, you know, sometimes, you know, people don't understand.
I'm not going to
And
try and
that's-
talk much because I'm eating, but I got to say, I'm going to give you an honest opinion here. This is incredible. This sausage or hot dog, it looks like a hot dog to me with tons of things on it. When you described all that to me, sounded bizarre. I thought this is going to be something my flavor
No.
palate's not ready for. This is very tasty
You
stuff.
having-
If I gave this to my 5-year-old grandson, he'd go, that's really
You're
good.
having a special experience right now.
Wow, I really am.
And Chef Keith knows my taste. He brought me a different type of sausage. It's more German style. He has a kraut, that he makes his own kraut, and mustard. I had that before a couple of times. Believe me, so good. And
That's the one you got there?
yes. and the brioche bun is unbelievable. So you have the sourness of the crust, the spiciness of the mustard, and the sweetness of the bun.
And what
Yeah.
surprises me about this hot dog is usually a hot dog, I'm just tasting the hot dog. And whatever I put up, mustard or relish or something, some onions. But it's still a hot dog. This has a multifaceted flavor to it. I taste the richness and spiciness of the sausage as well as all these other accoutrements that you've added here, these add-on things here.
It's a meal.
And it's a meal. It's a compliment. It's not
It is.
just a bunch of stuff piled on a dog.
Yes.
That makes sense?
So it's a meal, it's an experience, and because of his menu, you can have different experience each time, or you come back to the one you like, and then you can. We can come back to other
Can
things.
he come back every week and do this?
Sure. And I want you to try one of his sausage from his menu. It's very, very a great selection of dishes. So why did you want to go into the sausage business?
Initially, the concept started out as stuffing sausages to order, kind of like a Chipotle or Subway, where it's like, what proteins do you want in your sausage?
Yeah.
What stuffings do you want? But then we had to develop some kind of way to dry the sausage, and so we can't cook freshly stuffed sausage, so there has to be a drying process. So we kind of had to step away from that and create a more. On our website, we have a customizable, it's called build your own sausage. So you can go on there, you can pick anything from the 31 legal California proteins that you can use in elk, venison, boar, alligator, camel. There's a couple
You
things.
can make a sausage out of elk and boar and all those other things there?
Yeah, so you can go on our website and you can build your own sausage, right? And so everything's priced out, and so what you can do is you can create your own sausage, create the fat, because there needs to be a fat meat ratio in order to maintain the juiciness of the sausage. And then you can add things like, because we have our different flavor profiles, so all of our flavor profiles are selected by a spice blend. So if you want to do a alligator bratwurst, we would just use our bratwurst dry mix to incorporate that bratwurst flavor.
Well, let's tell the audience, this is optional.
Yeah, this is optional. So
Yeah.
we do have 12 house recipes right now. Anything from fennel lavender Italian to a merguez sausage, which, like I was saying before, we stuff in hog casing. Traditionally, a merguez is in a sheep casing. So it's a little bit different than what might be traditionally bought, but the flavors on that merguez are
I've never even heard what that is. What is
Oh,
it?
merguez is
It's a lamb sausage.
It's a lamb sausage,
Okay.
a little spicy, and it has a spice usually that we call harissa. It's a non-African type of sausage, and usually you steam it in with a couscous, vegetarian couscous and grain. It's so good. It's just fabulous. Yeah. And it's thinner too. Usually it's not as big as this. And so your shop is a small shop, all right? And can you tell us your location?
So our location is at 1750 Newport Boulevard, where the former Grants for Guns used to be in Costa Mesa, off Newport Boulevard. It's a little takeout spot, but we do a lot of business out of there now with our sausage concept, along with a couple of other concepts that we're running, just to help kind of expand our presence on the delivery app platforms. Doing things like smash burgers and Nashville hot chicken. They're super simple, super efficient, and economic.
You can see either there is a line to do the ordering at a beautiful system, electronic system of ordering, but also you see the driver from what? You use DoorDash?
Yeah, DoorDash. DoorDash,
there-
Uber Eats, and Grubhub.
DoorDash is there and pack, wait online to pick up the food to deliver.
Right. Right. So a lot
To
of people.
Chef's earlier point, how does this compare to a hot dog I would get at Hot Dog Heaven or whatever or something?
Well, I think, see, the term hot dog is actually a misconception because what people buy is what's called a Frankfurter.
Okay, yeah.
A Frankfurter is what a hot dog.
Okay.
So it's just a style of sausage, I would say, or force
Yeah,
meat. I mean,
yeah.
tradition technically, but a Frankfurter's got a whole different process, in much as like double grinding and a different emulsification process than a sausage would, right? Well, we use kind of like, I wouldn't call it a country style grind because that's a little bit more coarse and thick and crumbly, but we have a pretty good system going on because what we're trying to do in the emulsification process is trying to get the fat and the meat to kind of blend together to create like a substance. And if you, I mean,
The
if you-
closest thing to that could be a bratwurst.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's similar to a bratwurst. I would
Yeah.
call it like a bratwurst style
Yeah.
emulsification.
And
You know,
I don't know what the word emulsification really means.
Oh,
when you emulsify, you're emulsifying fat and liquid. Olive oil, like vinaigrette, would be a good example of an emulsification that people are familiar with, where you're combining a fat like oil and a water-based substance such as juice or vinegar.
yeah. And
Right.
you have to grind it so actually it can stay together.
Yeah.
I
Without adding any
Otherwise, it separates.
stuff.
Yeah,
or-
if you grind meat,
Yeah.
if you grind a beef chuck, right,
Right.
and you put it and you take that and you stuff it into a sausage and you roll it up, you're going to cook it. But as soon as you cook it,
It's just
and,
fell
and
apart.
cut it, it's just all the meat's going to come out of the
It's not
casing.
the protein itself doesn't keep it together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And like now, actually, he has a special order for boudin blanc. All right, we talk about that.
For what? No, you
Boudin
gotta-
blanc.
what is
It's-
that?
It's a white broth, actually. No, used to be mostly veal with a kind of a little bit of bready dough and some dairy into it. But now people use chicken meat as well.
Yeah.
And it's a broth or a soup or something?
No, it's a sausage. A boudin blanc. Blanc is French for white, and rouge is French for red. So like, there's a boudin rouge and there's a boudin blanc, and the boudin rouge uses pig's blood, where the boudin blanc traditionally uses pig liver, which is it doesn't have very much blood in it. But what we do is it's a different style of sausage, where because you're using a cut of meat such as liver, which is naturally a higher fat content than you would a muscle like a shoulder muscle perhaps. So it's a different technique.
It's very traditional at Christmas time in Europe, especially in France. And on the top of it, sometimes they put truffle in it. It's
Yes.
like-
Truffle.
It's so good. It's really good.
I saw a recipe with foie gras. in it.
Oh, with foie gras, and you eat that with
That'd be
some
good.
sauteed apples. It's so
I'm going to
good.
go back to eating, but I got to ask one more question because this really is spectacular. I'm not just saying that because he's here. I would say otherwise. How did you learn all this about sausages? Did you grow up? Was your dad a butcher or in a meat business? I mean, chef talks about growing up watching his mother cook.
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your experience that brought you to what you're doing now?
Well, I would say a lot of my professional experience was working in like fine dining, higher end restaurants, right, where we created things from scratch, and we did a lot of things, from raw product to in creating these things, right? So I mean, starting out in my career, I was working at like a lot of bars and a lot of like lower end restaurants, and I kind of, as I was getting older in my age, and I wanted to get better at my art,
Yeah,
at my craft.
you are old. Yeah.
I wanted to get better, and I wasn't really a big guy on school. I tried culinary at school, but then, having with the amount of experience I had, I ended up being more of a teacher's aide to the other students than actually learning anything. And so I'm self-taught. I learned through the industry, through working in professional kitchens, working with professional chefs, and working off the clock, and internship style work. And
I think I know why you did that. And you tell me if I'm wrong. I think you had a dream that you wanted to have your own business,
yeah,
being your own chef.
well, I wanted to create my own dishes, and I wanted to create my food. And I remember I had an experience in Las Vegas when I was working there for Rick Moonen, and I remember the chef came up and he's like, "Hey Keith, I need you to create the mousse bouche tonight."
Wow.
And I was just
That was
to
great.
the moon. I was just
Trust
like,
you.
I was like, "What?"
They give you a chance.
And
Yeah.
And he goes,
And what is that dish? You guys keep dropping these things. I don't know what they.
amuse-
You all know what they are.
Amuse bush is started having fun in your mouth. So little amuse, you have a bite.
Oh, amuse. Yeah, a
Yeah,
little amusement they
bouche,
give you.
yeah,
Right.
amuse bouche is like a single
It's a
bite.
tease.
Yeah.
It's presented to you at the beginning of your meal, and it's kind of just like to warm you up, brighten you up. It has to be warm and bright and like acidic, and it can't. And the secret in the kitchen is it has to have zero food cost.
Well,
Because you're giving it away.
Also, we try to make it spicy or salty so you can drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, so there's, we manipulate things a little bit in the kitchen. We want to create people to, enjoy it. It's an experience coming to eat.
Why do
with-
you think we have chips in Mexican restaurants? Make you drink. They are salty and spicy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All the chips and stuff. But I never.
That's a Mexican amuse bush.
I've seen. I've seen the amuse. How do you say it?
Amuse bouche.
Amuse bouche. Okay. At nicer restaurants, fancy restaurants, where the chef brings on and says, "I got a little something for you,"
There you go.
and you're like, "I didn't order that." I know.
No.
Just put a smile on your face. I don't see many do that, but I've had that experience where some
Wow.
do it, and it does put a smile on your face because you feel special.
Sure. Yeah. It is.
Absolutely.
On special place,
Yeah.
thing they have to do that, and they do.
But I
It
didn't know they
works.
tried to make it salty and with no food costs to give it away or whatever,
To
or
get back to,
spicy.
to get back to the question, though, I
Yeah.
think, some people say maybe down my heritage, I was related to Abe Froman, but I really think that I came up with this concept of creating a sausage product that was unlike what people are used to. People are so used to having hot dogs, and it's like this mystery meat, and people were like, "Oh, you don't want to know what's inside that."
And we
Exactly.
usually most of the time
Right?
we wonder what's
How the
inside.
sausage is stuffed.
And
It's like, oh yeah, I don't know what's in there.
I felt like this. I was compelled to have this, to create a product where people didn't have to think like that. Where it's like that bratwurst right there is pork shoulder, spices, and casing.
Wow.
That's it, and it's not trim meat. It's not.
It's not
there's
tails or whatever is left
we,
over.
We,
yeah.
we order pork shoulder by the case and grind it ourselves, and we so it's the product's clean, and it's like I think that not only is that going to help people feel more comfortable eating it, but I think that it creates a better product. You know what I mean? When I have the opportunity to grind the meat and put my love into it, and the more time I spend with my food, the better it tastes.
Yes.
That's how I feel.
How much work it is to come up? Okay, you're going to have to make this sausage again and again.
Yeah.
So, but there's a stage where you have to practice to make sure you get to the right taste you were expecting or looking
Right.
for. I'm sure there was some. kind of
And I
work.
started in 2023. I remember I had this concept come up, right? And so, I wanted to come up with the proof of concept. So what I did was I started making these sausages in my house.
Yeah.
Well, about halfway through the production, I realized.
Did your family were not too tired of sausages?
No, my family is fine with it, but the problem we were having was
What's for dinner tonight?
the-
Sausage.
the commercial production of sausage is not meant for a house.
No.
So let's just put it that
That's
way.
true.
So
yeah,
messy,
you have
little
to, no, you have
smelly.
to
We
be
had
creative.
smells, we
You,
had
you
things.
need to have a very clean environment. You need space and really,
yeah, very clean, very and cold.
Yes.
You gotta be temperature regulated because it's things just emulsify better in the cold than they do in the hot. Plus,
Yeah.
we got to worry about temperature abuse. But I was creating the sausages, and it's like one of those things where I had this. I created a recipe. I followed the recipe. I tried it, and I said, no, this isn't it. We need to adjust it this way. Then we made another batch, and then okay, we need to adjust it this way. And I mean, I remember my first batch of chorizo that we made. It was the spiciest thing I have ever eaten. And I was telling people, I was like, you don't want to eat that. That is
Inhuman.
It was like unpalatable.
Did you have a glass of milk on the side?
Dude, it was hotter than that. It was hotter than that. It was, and so like that's an example of what we did is kind of we dialed back the the guajillo and the ancho chili. We dialed back the cayenne. We implemented things like we started adding bacon to the recipe to help the fat content kind of mellow out the spice, and we kind of perfected it about right before we opened. I mean, the first couple batches after we had opened too, we were kind of having issues with it because there were so many spices in it that it was coming out pretty dry, like comparable to the other sausages, which were the same. And I'm like, well, we have 3 pounds of spice going into this 10-pound batch, that's probably what it is. We need to put fat into it.
Am I right for the onions and for pork? So he knows. Okay, you make a batch of the stuffing of the sausage. It tastes good right now. You do a little test and you cook a little piece of it, and then say, oh, it tastes good. And now, 2 hours later, the next day, the flavors change because the meat is cured, and sometimes the spiciness develop, and the saltiness develop as well. So it's very important you get to the right point, so you know it can be the perfect test the next day.
And I think that's kind of what helps me stand out as a chef, is that I care so much about that, the flavor, and it's like, not only is like the size so important and creating a consistently 7-inch, 7-ounce link.
It's not easy.
It's not at all. And it's like, because we have to deal with things like Mother Nature, such as the casings. Like the casings, not every pig has the same size casing.
How long is the casing normally? But
it depends. So I'd probably say like 6 feet to 10 feet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Usually
This is
about
what, the intestines of a pig or something?
Don't go
the,
to
the lining.
many
It's the
details.
lining, but they're salt cured. So when we receive them, they're packed in salt, and then we have to rinse them out probably for about 30 minutes in cold water to help kind of get all that brine off of them. Or the sausage will come out way too spicy. Once again, that was one of the lessons we learned.
I got to ask this question. Chefs keep saying, don't ask questions, but I got to ask this question because I'm smiling. I'm amused at watching the two of you talk. Chef Pascal is known principally as a really fine dining, fancy French chef. I know he doesn't want to think of himself that way, but that's the way the public thinks of him. Upscale French cuisine.
Chef Pascal is a legend.
Okay. And
Thank
right. And we're talking about a guy who has as much passion, as much creativity and art in what we think of as the simplest American food, what we call a hot dog. It's probably really a Frankfurt. It's a style of sausage that we're used to here in this country, which doesn't seem like it takes that much thought, effort, energy, creativity to it. You've taken that and taken it to a whole
You
nother
have
level.
no idea. With my experience.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to share with the audience. And making a sausage with the way he does it, it is another dimension. And I know by experience how much work it takes to be developing this type of product. And, I want him to be known for that and people to respect the works behind. It's not just a sausage.
Right. And I think that, a lot of what kind of got me to where I'm at within the sausage realm of the business is you had mentioned it earlier in the show, is like how each country has its own sausage, and that's kind of how I shape my menu. I shape my menu in different regions of the world, from the merguez from Morocco, the sayua from Thailand. We have the Italian, obviously, from Italy, the bratwurst from Germany, and so we have different
This sausage I had is from Thailand?
It's a Thai-inspired recipe, yeah.
Wow.
And the garnishes is attached to the sausage, so it fits,
It's a balance.
concept.
And yet it
It's a
still
balance.
tasted like, it wasn't unrecognizable to me. It still tasted like a sausage, but with flavors I didn't expect or hadn't experienced.
Well, yeah, there are lemongrass in it.
Yeah, lemongrass.
So, yeah.
And the kefir lime leaves. The and there was like a lot of through my research, right, when I first started, learning things like the history between the andouille, right? How the andouille came actually from France to the French settlers in Canada, and then the French Canadians moved down to the bayou.
The Acadians.
They brought the
To
andouille.
New Orleans.
Traditionally, the andouille was made with a lot of different ingredients.
Yeah.
And it's
You didn't want to ask.
they
what was in it.
they will. We're not going to talk about that either. So, but and things like the currywurst, right? I found this fun story I like to tell people is the currywurst is a very traditional German sausage. It's traditionally served with a curry ketchup that we actually put inside the sausage, and Volkswagen in the 1960s, right, in Germany, who traditionally cooked in-house for their staff, created a currywurst dish, right? And this currywurst dish what got so popular. So they were just, everybody at Volkswagen loved this
No,
currywurst.
I didn't know that, sir. This is wonderful.
So the Volkswagen Motor Company actually started producing their Volkswagen currywurst wholesale. So if you go to Germany, you can buy a Volkswagen currywurst, and it's actually
No way.
they actually sell more sausages than they do cars.
Yeah, yeah.
Now that I didn't know.
That's super fun.
I will look at
Unbelievable.
Volkswagen tires next time. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
sausage.
Well, no, their recipe for their sausage and their curry ketchups actually has its own part number in their parts directory. So it's actually a really and see these fun stories of sausages, and like
Yeah.
coming up with, because we have people are so familiar with like the longaniza, right, which is a Filipino style sausage.
I'm say that
And-
one again. No, I never heard of that.
Longaniza.
Yeah.
Longaniza.
And then there's like different styles of longaniza for like different like Latin American, Pacific
Yes,
Islander
yeah.
areas, right? So it's like, it's fun because you can
You even
you
have those little dried Vietnamese sausage. It's really good
yeah,
too.
yeah. Those Chinese sweet sausage.
Never
I
heard
love
of any of
those.
this. What made people way back when, maybe I'm going too far into history because I'm a history buff, take meat, grind it up, emulsify it, and put a wrapping around it? When did we decide rather than just eat the meat?
To give you maybe Kiefer his answer, but to give a kind of a raw description,
Okay. Bad
people
joke.
used to slaughter their own meats, their
Clear.
own animals,
Right.
and they wanted to use every part of the animal
Exactly.
and do something. And so, so the intestine was one part, but also you have some lesser desirable part of meat, like pork belly. People
Pork bellies, yeah, right.
They never always use pork belly. You have all the fat from the trimming,
Yeah.
and then so you put all this together, and then it doesn't stay together. So you put it in a sausage. So either they make it fresh, eat them fresh, or they air dry cure them too as well.
Right.
That is the best explanation I've ever heard for why we have sausages here.
Well, like what he was saying was that they wanted to utilize the whole product,
Yeah,
right?
makes
And
sense.
so this is before we had things like science and foodborne illness and stuff like that. But botulism was actually originally called the sausage disease.
Really?
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Okay, that's not good publicity.
No, I mean that's why we don't use nitrates and we
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
use that kind of stuff and we don't air dry. We freeze dry.
And my next question, does sausage last longer? Like a cured meat, I can store it in the barn or I can keep it
right.
longer.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
not the fresh one. The fresh won't last long.
Anymore.
Things like a prosciutto or
Yes, right.
a salami.
I can just
is a
keep
cured
that
meat.
for decades, it seems like.
Well, and they would back in the day before we had modern refrigeration, that's what they would do is they would store their foods in dry, cold places,
Right.
typically like underground,
Right.
and things like that. And that's
Or hang them in a big chimney
Exactly.
to smoke and slow cook. no?
yeah they would hang
But
them
then
in
that
their
would
own
preserve
chimneys.
them so that it wouldn't go bad as quickly.
Right.
Exactly.
right.
Yes. And I love dry sausage in France where you eat saucisson, but also in Spain you have those dry chorizo that are really good. And in Germany you also have those dry sausage hanging, even in the bar. They are behind the bar. You can grab a dry sausage, very thin, and you have your mug of beer. That's the best.
Yeah.
So what it shows me is here, a legendary chef is talking with a young guy who decided, I'm still not sure why, to go into the sausage business. If he's going to do it, he's going to find all these international sausages and recipes and make this fresh and all this stuff and do it from scratch. And you're talking like this is just another type of excellent cuisine here. We might as well be
It is.
discussing the...
It is, but kudos to him
Yeah.
to go that route
Yes,
because it's very unique. Not
I'd say.
first, not many chefs have that knowledge how to make it, and not that many chefs have the I would say
Resources.
the resources, also
the desire to
the
explore.
creativity as
Yeah.
well. It's very important, and so you have a niche. And talking about this niche, you create this shop that urge people to visit because it's unique. You're the only one, I don't know, maybe all over California to do this type of product. Do you think you want to do another shop Maybe another one?
That's where I was going.
Absolutely,
Is this
yeah.
a chain? Is this a series?
yet.
Is
Well,
it-
the business plan is
Franchise?
is built out. The business plan is built out as a franchise where we're going to end up franchising the restaurant, but we're going to keep the sausage
I
production.
didn't know that. I wanted to know.
We wanted to keep the sausage production exclusive.
Can I invest in it?
Yes, actually,
Yeah.
you can.
It's that
Actually,
good,
you
and we all
can.
should.
Well, right now we have a big e-commerce site, so we're shipping nationwide. I've gotten 6 out of the 50 states so far, and we ship a lot of sausages. I mean,
Wow.
Is that hard to get to, because you got to go through all the regulatory processes for each state to be able to ship?
no, I mean,
Food from one state to
luckily,
another.
right, because we're on a retail level of sale, we're business to consumer.
Right.
We're actually exempt from the USDA certification. If we get into business to business, B2B sales, that's when we're going to need to get a USDA certified meat plant. Is what they're
So to
categorized
sell to
as.
the public is one thing,
It's
but to
different.
sell to the chef for his
Right,
restaurant is
right.
another.
Yeah, because that was a big thing in the beginning
Or
too.
retail.
Well, I was doing my business plan, and I had to call the USDA to ask them some questions, and I was like, okay, so what is this going to cost?
What's your options?
And
Yeah.
I'm talking to him, and he's like, wait a minute, you're just selling retail? And I'm like, yeah, just retail. He goes, well, you're exempt then. And I was like, can I get that in writing?
Yeah.
You know, and so
He
actually,
probably didn't.
I'm
know.
actually allowed to do 25% of my annual sales are allowed to be business to business. But it's one of those things that I feel like if we get into the wholesale market, it's going to grow substantially. And I don't think I'm going to be able to maintain a
Yeah,
25%.
yeah.
So right now we're in communications with a couple co-packers in the area, which I had some demos the last week and I wasn't very happy with. Well, I won't say any names.
Because they want to pack it like a
Well,
hot dog.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
no, it's-
also you're not there for the mass, because if you do more of a mass production, and you have to watch all the steps, everything need to be
Right,
perfect.
and it's
Yeah.
like the quality just wasn't there.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
I was getting like ligaments stuck in my teeth, between my teeth, and the grind wasn't really fine enough. And
So you
I was
lose-
talking to the
you lose
co-packer.
a client at the first bite.
Yeah, and I would love to go through a co-packer, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of my quality.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Good for you.
So I got to ask one more question. Are you all these thoughts running through my head here? So here you are, maybe wanted to take this nationwide.
Oh, I am nationwide.
Yeah, but
I mean, where there'll be
as a
locations, or there'll
franchise,
be
yeah.
franchise and other sorts of things. And as you grow and want to do this, how do you balance? How do I say this politely? You go to McDonald's, they taste the same whether they're in Europe or France. It may not be the greatest food in the world, but it has a predictability to it. They've somehow figured out that the hamburger in Italy tastes exactly as the hamburger next door here. How do you come up with that consistency?
I think that is the greatest question of all franchise restaurants.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
oh,
I
even in restaurant too.
Yeah.
No, that's,
I remember I was on an interview one time, interviewing for an executive chef position, and the general manager asked me. He said, "What's your favorite fast food chain?" And I said, "I have to think about that."
well, I know the answer.
My answer was In-N-Out Burger,
In and out. Yeah.
because they're a double at any location is the same thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, cat's out the bag. I'm a big fan of Jack in the Box, right? And I get a double bacon cheeseburger from there very often. And some people wrap it in paper and some people put it in a box. I like mine in a box, so it's not squished, you know. And it's like not every Jack in the Box is the same. And I think
But
that
let's go back to
consistency.
In and Out, because
That
I don't
consistency is
step in
important.
Jack in box. But
Yeah.
you know,
But whether you like the flavor of Jack in the Box or not, whether you think it's bland or just basic or boring,
Consistency. I think we're talking about consistency.
consistency is incredible. I remember having a McDonald's in somewhere, I don't know, Europe somewhere, and I thought, oh my God, this tastes exactly.
no, actually nothing if you go in Europe.
Well,
won't taste
maybe,
the same.
but
Yeah.
pretty darn close enough for my
Well,
palate.
Because the
and I
ingredients
think-
are different.
Because then that's what I want to do with when we franchise, we're going to keep the sausage manufacturing in house, right? So that we can have that consistency.
Right.
So all the sausages that are being sold at each franchise will be the same sausages that we make,
Like having a commissary.
like having a commissary, you know. And this business model kind of came about when I was thinking about opening a microbrewery, but BJ's was still hot on the market.
Right.
And I wanted to do something like that where we could franchise the brand name, but we would keep the beer production in house. And so they would be forced within the franchise agreement to buy our beer,
Yeah.
but also rep our, open
Right.
our location and sell our beer. So it's the same model as that, but we're going to be doing that with sausage.
I'll give you one other example from my days of a bar owner. I was never a great chef or didn't know restaurants like you guys are doing, but we had some food and we had a bar, a pretty popular bar, in Mission Viejo. And as part of that, we got to go tour the Budweiser plant up in Van Nuys or wherever it is. And I hate Budweiser. And we were trying to sell, this is when microbrew beers were just coming out, so we're trying to get people to do anything but a Budweiser or a Coors. Try something different here.
Probably you're getting some enemies right now.
I understand. So I'm just full disclosure. Budweiser to me is just kind of a bland, boring, basic beer. We were trying to get something more
It's
flavorful.
flavored
and different.
to sparkling water.
Exactly. But here's my point. I left that plant so impressed. They absolutely, wherever they brew Budweiser around the world, they have the same yeast that's from the original batch in St. Louis, and they chemically try and alter the water so that it tastes like the public water supply.
Do you know why?
So that whatever they did in St. Louis, the water they use, the yeast
They
they
have
use.
to. This is why one beer better than another. Is because it's not what you use to make the beer. It's the water.
Yes.
The water is the base of the beer, really.
Right.
And
And they made sure their water was as close as they could taste to the actual public water supply in St. Louis.
And that's
You-
with beer too. I mean, if we go to, you were talking about history buff.
Yeah.
So back in the days in Belgium, right?
Yeah.
The water supply in North Belgium was different than the water supply in South Belgium, where the South Belgian water source had a higher alkalinity rate. So the beer that they would make was different. North Belgian and South
exactly where I was going to go.
Yeah.
You cannot make a real Belgian beer here that will taste like in Belgium because you don't get the same water.
Right.
Unless you chemically alter the
Well,
water
that's,
to make it.
That's American
That-
corporation.
That reminds me, because a couple years ago, Hot Productions, my catering company, we do these pop-up dinners, and we did a pizza dinner. So I actually we did different regional pizzas: an Italian-style pizza, California-style pizza, New York-style pizza, Chicago-style pizza, and I actually had friends from Chicago and New York and Italy bring me tap water. I had my friend in New York City. She was having the hardest time wrapping her head around what I was asking. I said, I need you to get a gallon of water. I need you to dump it out. I need you to fill it up with the water from your sink,
Yeah.
and then send it to me.
Yeah.
Can I share something?
Please, yeah. I know we're going to come.
I'm going to make some enemies too.
Okay.
You know my favorite pizzas, where they are?
Your favorite pizza. This is quite a disclosure for you to tell us. I don't know.
In France.
Uh-oh.
You and Bruno talked about this. I thought a pizza is Italian.
No, the French pizza, you cannot get that. Well, in Italy, you get something good because they have great tomato, they have great topping on cheese. But the dough itself in France is unbelievable.
I thought the Italians made up the dish. I didn't know there was a French pizza.
Well, they made up spaghetti. I don't know. So,
But yeah, that seems to be the question of the day. How do you get it consistent as you move from location to location, city to city, state to state, different water, different suppliers, different packagers, all that
And
stuff.
I think that's the what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a foundation like that.
Yeah.
So we have recipes, and we call it the Haute Dawgz Bible, where it's like all of our sauces, all of our sausages, all of our anything and anyone should be able to pick up that book and make our food. And so when we go to open up second and third and fourth locations, we're basically just going to take that Bible.
If you have a commissary, and then
Yeah.
it's a different approach.
And that's what they say about In-N-Out. We've done some interviews with people from In-N-Out. It's different. One, they insist on it's fresh every day, fresh delivered. So that's what's inhibited their growth. They have to have a place nearby that can deliver their meat to their stores. It can't be frozen and later. They insist on that. And the second thing is supposedly there is, wherever it is up in Irwindale or wherever the headquarters are, they have a locked safe with the original recipes.
But this is not anything. Fortunately enough, I knew the original owner and his dad.
You did?
Yes,
Okay.
and they used to come to my restaurant.
Wow.
And the new owner now, she loved my lemon tart. So every birthday,
Weren't they all killed in a plane crash here in Orange County?
the
three of them?
parents
Yeah.
and the administration, they're coming back
Yeah.
from Las Vegas, right there on the 55 freeway.
Yeah.
But anyway, they used to come to my restaurant with their
This is a great story.
their potato-
In and out founders.
yeah, with their potato growers and their bakers.
Okay.
And he told me, say, the key of our success. I have the same baker that my dad did, and I will never change.
Really?
I have the same potato grower, and we will never change it. And same thing with the tomato and everything. They don't change the supplier or the growers. And that's it.
Wow.
I think that,
And they insist on it being fresh, so they're not just freezing it and shipping it out
yeah,
like McDonald's.
beside the whole thing, they're not going to make a fancy burger. This is their burger.
Yeah.
So
A great story.
one thing I want to ask, and maybe because we have to wrap up soon, with all that, Keith is very well respected in our culinary community. We have a tight family, and even yesterday we were 5 or 6 of us putting together a charity fundraising. Do you want to talk about that fundraising on pigs and Pinot?
Yes.
Pigs and Pinot.
Yes.
Pigs and
There's two
Pinot.
things I don't normally mix in my head.
So we have a collection of 7 chefs who are going to get together and highlight a pork dish. Obviously, maybe not so obviously, but I'm going to be presenting a sausage.
Yeah, pretty obvious.
It's going to be a Berkshire
A pork sausage.
Yeah, Berkshire pork, black garlic, and truffle sausage. And we're going to be raising money for a benefit called Costa OC, who works a lot with the orphanages and the foster homes and foster children.
We've had them in here. It's
Yeah.
been our privilege to talk to them. They do great work.
Yeah, the Costa OC. I
So
mean,
we're going
I
to
love that.
to do a fundraising event at Park Club,
At the park club.
At the Park Club. Okay, there's a
and
fancy
each
location.
chef is going to make his own creation, but it could be pork-based recipes and Pinot Noir.
This can't
Yeah.
be cheap. So what's the cost to buy a
It's not-
seat at that dinner here?
It's not the price; it's the donations.
That's true.
It's
a good cause.
We don't talk about donation to be cheap. Donation, it's generosity.
But it can't be cheap to sit down with 7 chefs
take-
doing
We're
it.
not talking about.
Tickets are $500.
There you go,
That,
okay.
that includes so much food you can't eat.
Okay.
There's going to be so much wine that you can't keep up.
And good
Valets
wines.
there, amazing wines.
In a cool place with
And yeah, I mean,
incredible
it's
people.
7 great
And
chefs.
the Park Club is in a beautiful location next to the
Yeah.
Segerstrom for Performing Arts Center.
Spectacular.
Yeah, with the
So
fountains.
not
through
only
the
you are
glass.
going to have a great experience, high quality food and wine, and you feel good because you are a generous person.
Going to a good cause.
Yeah, and and I think it's a great cause. I mean, I personally feel really compelled to help contribute to their justice impact demographic, where a lot of kids who go through the foster programs, they kind of fall back into getting into
Yes,
legal trouble.
absolutely.
And I relate a lot to that, kind of coming from that same background.
And
They-
us as chef, it's kind of a give back because we eat every day what we want to eat.
Right.
We serve guests that can enjoy a great meal. A lot of these kids don't.
Right.
So I can't let that on the table. Chef shoved it aside. You said, I appreciate what they do with these kids because I come from that kind of background. Do you
Yeah.
want to share that?
Well, I mean, growing up in the kitchens, right? We have infamously been known to be, high intakes of drugs and alcohol.
So Anthony Bourdain taught us when he did his
Yeah.
Kitchen Confidential.
And so I think we were number 2 out of all the trades, right underneath construction workers, right? Where it's like I participated in the party scene and loved working in the kitchen because I could get away with being drunk at work and I could, smoke a little pot.
I'm so glad I don't have to
with
argue.
nobody, you know what I mean? And
Wow.
and I really enjoyed that kind of freedom of being in the restaurant industry. And I with a little bit over a year of sobriety now, and other lengths of time of being sober, I've learned that like I've been to prison. I've done, time in county jail,
Really? Wow.
and it's like it's tough, and it's hard to get out of that lifestyle. It's hard to get out of the system once you're in it. And so, I would love to, help people in that area who can learn something and see like value in their life.
Actually, we
Hats
do,
off to you.
because we are even a congratulations to you.
Thank you.
That you strong. Look at that. You create your own business, even you all the ups and up and down and troubles you've been through. Now you handle your life.
Right.
All right. But we still exposed to that because we have employees. They come to work and you don't know what they've done before they come to work, and they
Right.
take a bathroom break and they come back, they're not the same person. You know,
Right.
we deal with that all the time in
All
this
the
industry.
time. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Being a restaurant owner, doesn't necessarily get into stuff too rough, but I mean, dude, I've got at least 5 coworkers that I've worked with in the past who are dead now
Yeah.
from drug overdoses and stuff
And
like that.
we have friends that are chefs.
Yeah,
They have to go to get cleaned up in hospital, and we talk to each other, say, hey, man, if you don't stop, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to die.
well,
you
and
know?
isn't it Mental Health Month right now too?
I think it is.
Yeah, so so men's mental health. I mean, guys, if you guys need help,
Yes.
there's people out there who are willing to help you.
We-
you can find me, I'll help you.
Yeah, and we can talk to them.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. And
This is what happens behind the kitchen doors. This is
It
the part,
really
not,
is.
not only the creativity and the art, but the intersection of this lifestyle.
That's why I always say the kitchen doors has 2 sides.
Yeah.
The inside side where you have to do hard work, but the outside side, you don't know what happens when your cooks go home.
Right.
You know, that's, and we want to make sure we keep them online, that's virtually online in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But and then they go home, and then they have the very hard day. They go home and drink and do other things.
Party,
They
live it up,
should
whoop
not
it up.
have even more, and
Right.
because they fall down. So
Yeah. I mean, and I've had experience with employees like that too, right? Where when I owned the catering company, I actually had a really big niche in catering for the treatment facilities in the area. So what I was doing was I was hiring kids who were young in recovery who needed to get their feet off the ground, and I'm like, they started washing dishes. They can handle that. They can start doing mise en place, teach them how to use a knife, and I would give them experience. I'd give them a purpose.
Yeah.
And people enjoy coming to work for me. And I think it's really important as a business owner to create an environment where people enjoy coming
we
to
try
work.
to make them understand that
Yeah.
we give them a purpose, and
Yeah.
we give them. And that's why I always tell my employees who was fall down the crack, and say, you know what, this is a job. Hold on to it, because
Yeah.
this is real. All
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Everything else is not real. You just think, but so keep your job, and then that's
Keep
on
that
job.
high all the time.
Right.
All right, so we're going to have to go, but can
Okay.
you give us first, thank you for sharing
Thank
your
you.
personal life. It's very important, and I'm touched.
Thank you.
I am too. Yeah. I think everybody listening is and
Yes.
impressed and that much more interested in finding out what you're all about.
But it's put together. He came down and came back up with his own business. How long your business has been open?
I got a little redemption story. I definitely do. But we opened the doors at the kitchen on March 7th. So we're still brand new.
See?
We're still a baby.
All right, I'm so glad
And
we.
give us the website
we're
and the
right there.
location
Exactly.
again.
Yes.
Name,
The
spell it.
website is hotdawgzsausages.com.
Spell it.
HAUTEDAWGZ, and then sausages is just spelled normal, and .com.
And the location, if they want to come and buy it and try it, is
Our location is at 1750 Newport Boulevard, right by Triangle Square, the Costa Mesa Kitchens.
I knew that used to be you said Grant's
Guns,
Guns. That had been there
Guns
for 100
on
years.
outdoor stores. Yeah, I love that place before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite
been there forever,
quite a
too.
turnaround, and
Yeah.
but it's been it's just an honor to be able to have this opportunity to operate a business and to be able to give back and to and I really think that I try to do as much work with the community as I can, and I do operate and own a business, so I have to manage that, but
And if they want to come to this event and live it up and spend money for a good cause, how do they find the tickets to that?
July 20th. We'll put a
When you
link
post
in,
on Facebook and
we'll post a link.
we have
on
some
the-
material coming up.
July 20th. This is 2025. People listening to it later. July 20th at the Park Club, right across from Sagerstrom Center and all that.
Yes.
Is this
Yeah.
special dinner where you and others will have, what do you call it again? Pigs and
Pinot.
Oh, actually, you know, the chef came the
I
other
remember
day.
now that you
Yes,
say that. He
yeah.
talked about it.
Chef
Yes.
Daniel.
From the Park Club.
And amazing chef. Congratulations. Keep it going. And we're here for each other if we need to. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Chef.
Wow. Well, who knew what's happening behind the kitchen doors? The real story of creativity and life and all the craziness that goes into making a kitchen successful from two men who've been there and are doing it to this day. Behind the Kitchen Doors with Chef Pascal, right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation.